see truly, are they truly as bad as lots of people like myself is making them out to be regarding corruption, regarding bringing the country to its knees, unemployment, Eskom, the rolling blackouts, sabotage at Eskom, tenderpreneurship, and the list goes on. Your thoughts?
Mm. So maybe it might be useful to paint the context. So I think liberation movements that come to power tend to disintegrate, tend to implode 3, 4, 5 decades into power. So this is not completely surprising. And I think we have multiple examples to draw from. So if we look at liberation movements across the continent, a number of them, 3, 4, 5 decades, they start to get pushed to the periphery. We can also draw examples from, other parts of the world, including Asia, perhaps less so Latin America. So this does happen to liberation movements. And the reason it happens, I think, fundamentally is very often liberation movements come from a really radical past, opposing oppression, colonialism. They certainly have not been, in the days of exile and within the country, been preparing for governance. So corruption tends to set in, and I think corruption is largely the main factor that contributes to the implosion of liberation movements. Also, the romance of the liberation is wearing out, right? So what keeps liberation movements in power is what we tend to call liberation dividend. The idea that people will continue to vote for the ANC in our case because they brought us liberation or led the struggle for liberation. But, once you reach the sort of 3 decade mark, then that aura starts to wear out and people care less about, the gallant contributions you've made to liberation, but start to focus more on the real issues, the potholes being fixed, the traffic lights working, and us having water and electricity. And I think the ANC is at that point. Even many diehard supporters of the ANC are now completely disillusioned. I hope that painting of that context helps in framing our understanding of what's going on.
Absolutely. I have a few questions for you. Let's start with the first one, and it's about coalitions, and I'm not sure if they work in other parts of the world, but let's look at South Africa. Do you think that we have the ability to kick the ANC out of power in the upcoming elections via coalitions, or is it, exactly as you've said just now, lots of the people in government are ex-liberation movement guys, and do they believe that it is owed to them that, whether they're in coalitions or not, that they get the cream, that they get a cut of the pie, so to speak?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Julie, I think there are 2 points to make here. One is that we don't have experience of coalitions in South Africa, or I'd venture to say in many parts of Southern Africa. We are not a Sweden or a Denmark or a Germany where, coalitions are very much a part of political existence. So we have zero experience at coalitions, and our limited experience at local and provincial government so far has been dismal. But to answer the latter part of your question, and that was quite an emotional kick out of the ANC, I think coalitions have the possibility of doing both. One is really reinforcing the ANC's rule and the ANC's power. And of course, on the other hand, getting the ANC out of power. How would coalitions reinforce ANC power? Of course, we know there are multiple possibilities for coalitions and we can enumerate them, right? But one of the distinct warring possibilities for many people is a coalition between, if the ANC comes to the 40% mark and not the 30% mark that Fikile Mbalula is touting over the weekend, if the ANC comes to the 40% mark, it can very easily get into a coalition with the EFF and reinforce its power. And we've started to see moves already in Gauteng where the leadership is indicating its willingness to gravitate closer to the EFF. So coalitions can reinforce ANC power. But on the other hand, they can certainly fragment and push the ANC to the periphery. We know that someone like John Steenhuisen is talking about this Moon Pact and this coalition that he's claiming will shift the ANC out of power. Although if one looks closely, numerically, what he's suggesting does not make sense. The Democratic Party gets a little over 20%, and the next party is the EFF, which is not part of that coalition. So one can't imagine how that coalition is really going to get rid of the ANC. But I think there are other possibilities where parties can come together even beyond what Steenhuisen is suggesting. So I think coalitions are the future. One can't predict how it's going to happen, but there are multiple possibilities for what a coalition government is going to look like in 2024.
So, Dr. Imraan, who are the new left pact?
Well, last week on television, the BLF, led by Andile Priyotama, came out and was suggesting that they are in talks with the Pan-Africanist Congress, AZAPO, and the ATM to form a coalition. I hate to be crude about this, but it really is a laughable suggestion. Not the left laughable. I very much like following the left and following what's happening on the left. But this particular pact that they're talking about, I think, is laughable. It's laughable because if you look at each of those parties, I think the best performance of all of them were under 1% since 1994. And I think several of them got below 0.2% in 2019. And we also know that Andile Priyotama and Zonele Mani's ATM, which he started out, are really a joke. These are parties that were linked to Jacob Zuma. These were parties that have lots of dirt on them. And they really don't, of course, the ZAPO and the PAC come from a really credible past, but they really don't have the electoral muscle to galvanize the electorate. Is there a possibility for a different left pact? Of course, I think there is. And that left pact will come from the very strong tradition of leftism that we have in this country, from the UDF, from COSATU, from social movements. And I don't want to get into the minuscule detail, but for example, COSATU has about 1.8 million. Abashali, which is a social movement, has 100,000. SACP 300,000. Up to a few 100,000. But if one looks at all of those numbers, that kind of left coalition or left pack, I think, has the ability to get a significant chunk of the vote and perhaps change the landscape of the elections in 2024. But certainly not the left pack of the ATM and the BLF.
Two more questions before I let you go. You alluded earlier on to the EFF and the ANC going into a coalition, possibly post the elections 2024. Do you think that if that does happen, that we'll see an escalation of the whole RET? The whole RET being put in place and escalating that idea in South Africa. And how will that impact on the rest of us, the rest of South Africa? Is it going to be good for us? I'm kind of wondering, if not properly implemented, if we do get to that point, the impact on South Africa.
I think that's a great point, Julie. You're right. I think the EFF has made a number of statements, giving us the indication of their proximity to RET forces. In the midst of an Eskom crisis, we heard Judith Malema make some really absurd statements about who to bring back at Eskom, people who were a part of the RET faction and really linked to the corruption that was exposed at the Zondo Commission. So yes, I think there are forces within the ANC. I'd like to think that the RET is on the back foot, that it's being pushed to the periphery. But certainly if the EFF and the ANC comes to power in 2024, there will be significant elements within this coalition that will push for a greater relationship with RET forces. And all of us know that that's a terrible thing. The RET forces, we have one thing high up on the agenda, and that's not serving the public interest, but it's about looting the public purse.
Mm, mm. Finally, your hopes for South Africa post 2024 elections, I guess immediately and post the elections.
I think, Julia, it's understandable that people are despondent. People are really upset. Many people are talking about packing their bags, and there's many middle class people who have that option and have opportunities abroad are really taking that up. But I think there is hope, and I think two things that are central pivots in a democracy are civil society and what you are doing as the media and the free media. And I think South Africa has credible civil society and credible media. And these two pivots are holding the state to account. And we've seen the extent to which the media, particularly, and civil society, has exposed corruption in the ANC. I think there are a number of really credible people in the country, really credible formations that care about the country. And mind you, I think there are a number of credible people within the ANC whose voices have really been lost. So I think there are possibilities. I think, the time comes in the life of a liberation movement for it to get pushed to the periphery and maybe reinvent itself, which often doesn't happen. But I think change is on the horizon. I think people need to believe in that change. And I think, there's still a great deal of good in South Africa. I don't think we are a failed state. Our institutions have not failed completely. Our civil society remains credible. Our media remains credible. So I think despite hope fading away, there still is hope for a future in South Africa.
That certainly gives me hope. I'm quite a cynic regarding our politics, but alhamdulillah, I'm glad I've spoken with you this morning. Senior Research Associate at the Auwal Socio-Economic Research Institute, and that was Dr. Imraan Buccus. Thank you once again for your insights and your time. Till the next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you.
Wa alaikum salam.
It is exactly 18 after 8. News and views right here on Salam Media. Let me give you a quick rundown of what is coming up on the show. We will be talking with Shaheen Ismail on Hajj Diaries. Crescent Lifestyle Managing Director Alfred Nas Patel is also going to be talking to us about their sponsorships 2023. They have sponsored 1 or 2 Hujjaj. So we'll talk about that. On the top of the hour, we'll be joined by my colleague, and that, of course, is Jadwood with the news bulletin of the morning. Nasib Darsut, a member of the Mdeni Muslim Association, is going to talk to us about the grand opening of the new Mdeni Masjid in Soweto. It happened yesterday. We have the most amazing pictures and video clips of that wonderful event. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless one and all for that initiative. Also on the show, journalist based in Gaza, Walid Mahmoud, is going to talk to us about 200,000 Palestinian families who have lost out on UN food aid. So what's their future going to be like? Ya Allah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy on them. Also on the show, CEO of Southern African Agri Initiative, Francois Rousseau, is going to talk to us about the effects of the blue tongue vaccine shortage in South Africa and what is the impact on meat supply. We also have heard about avian flu in the Western Cape, so another blow to us as consumers. So all of that and much more coming up on the show this morning. Please do keep me company. The time is 20 after 8 o'clock.